Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So the preview video for Game Week 5 is here. I'm going to start by taking a look at the mini league from Game Week 4, as well as my own team and how I did. I'll then move on to the captaincy option, so who is the best captain for Game Week 5, and I'll finish by discussing my own team and transfer thoughts moving forward. There's not any charts in this video. I quite like this video to be a bit more discussion and a bit more instinct and eye test based on what I've seen. But if you do want to see the charts, you can go check out the wildcard video. Link will be at the end. I also want to say a big thank you because we did do it. We got to 500 subscribers, which is such a cool milestone. Honestly, I don't take it for granted the fact that people actually subscribe to my channel and watch my videos. I think it's awesome. And, I just wanted to say thank you for all of that because I do appreciate it. And you never know, maybe in the next few years, I could even get to 1,000 subscribers. That'd be the next cool milestone. So let's take a look at the mini league and shout out to Marco, who not only got manager of the week, but he's also top of the mini league entirely. And I guess 106 points will do that for you. Not only that, but he used his bench boost fantastically. Someone like a Dubravka, say, who was on for a clean sheet and bonus points. Imagine if he'd saved that Salah penalty as well. You're looking at a huge score like 15 points on top of what he already had. And it's not like Marco benefited from Salah scoring that penalty because he doesn't even own him. He captained Haaland for 26 points, which is a great shout. Had Semenyo, Pedro, Gyökeres, ton of clean sheets are stuck in there as well. And on the bench had Livramento and Van der Ven. It is one of those weeks where if you looked at your bench and you had Van der Ven on there for 14 points, you'd be really gutted, but he's thankfully used it at the right time. And it is a great example for anyone who's maybe not got off to the best start that they want to, because I think Marco was around the 2.5, 3 million mark after game week 3. He's got this score and now he's inside the top 200k. It just goes to show how, you know, volatile the rankings are this early into the season. It never really settles down until after game week 10. So there is a ton of time to gain rank and, have a fantastic season. So just a little message to anyone who might be looking at this and thinking, God, I wish I had 106 points in a week. It could be you next week. So let's take a look at my team. And I obviously didn't do as well as Marco, but 70 points wasn't too bad. There's some good performers in here. There was pretty much everyone got a clean sheet. Anderson got me 10 points, which I'm very grateful for. And I also had João Pedro get an assist with 2 bonus. And Salah's penalty again. I know he's got all his points in the last 5 minutes of every game, but I actually see it as positive. I think it's something that he won't obviously keep doing that. Hopefully, he'll start scoring in the actual main sections of the games rather than injury time. He is someone who, if he is just scoring you points, I'll absolutely take it. Semenyo did what Semenyo does, got a goal and an assist. Very glad to see him on penalties. That's something which is extremely encouraging, and I'm glad I had him in from the start of the season. So I did bring in Madueke and João Pedro. And Madueke, I am happy with. I know he's got some difficult fixtures now, but when Arsenal's fixtures turn and I've got him in my squad, I think he's a really good player. I know Saka could be coming back, but I think for Saka with his hamstring injury, he's at least going to be eased back in. And those injuries do tend to linger more than you would expect. So I'm not worried about Madueke's minutes right now. And João Pedro was brought in as a bit of a safety net, really, because he's so highly owned. So 70 points all out. And it was a grey arrow, really, which means that I didn't quite move rank. But it was actually a small red arrow. I only went down in rank 4k, which I think is so hard to do early on in the season. When you think about people like Marco who are going millions of places up and down the leagues, I pretty much stayed exactly the same, which I'm quite impressed with myself, really. I think that's something that's really tricky to do. So it does leave me just inside the top million, which I will absolutely take after 4 game weeks. And it's something that I can hopefully build on after a really solid start. So we'll take a look at the best captaincy options. And again, it feels like we're saying the same thing every week, but I don't just want to say something just for the sake of it. Salah is probably the best captaincy option. You look at the other alternatives on this list who have highest predicted points, and there's no way you would captain Ollie Watkins this week, even away at Sunderland. Sunderland are a good team, especially at home, and Villa haven't scored a goal yet. They obviously will score at some point, but there's no way I'd be captaining Watkins over any of the other players on this list, really. And I think the fact that Arsenal play Man City just means that, why would you captain an Arsenal or a Man City player if you own Salah? I think the Merseyside derby tackles will be flying in. There's every chance of another penalty for Liverpool, and there'll also be space in behind, for Salah to maybe run into. And I can definitely see him getting a couple of returns here. So I will be captaining Salah. I don't see if you own Salah why you would risk captaining somebody else. You don't need to chase points and go really differential at this stage of the season. Just get as many points as you can. And I do think Salah offers that this week. So let's take a look at my team and so much money in the bank, 4.6 million. Don't really know what to do with it all. And one thing I won't be doing is making a transfer on my goalkeeper. Even though Pickford's got some tough fixtures, he's doing really well. He's getting 6 points per game for me, and I've only got one free transfer. So I'm definitely not going to use it on a goalkeeper that's performing well. I'm more than happy to have him in for the good fixtures, and I'm more than happy to have him in for the tricky fixtures because he can still save penalties. Everton are a good team this season, it looks like, so they're quite solid and can keep a clean sheet against most opposition. And your goalkeeper's not going to keep a clean sheet every week anyway. No one's does, so there's no point swapping between them, wasting your free transfers. I think the most clean sheets anyone got last season was 13, which was Arsenal. So it even means that even Arsenal, who are widely considered to be the best defence in the league, didn't keep a clean sheet for 25 games as well. So, I'm happy with Pickford. He's my goalkeeper for the foreseeable. Even on a wild card, I probably will keep hold of him. So into defence, and if there was a player that I'm going to be taking out, it would be Wan-Bissaka. He's not even playing for West Ham at the moment. Now, there are a few issues with using my one free transfer on Wan-Bissaka. A, he's on my bench as it stands. So if I did bring in someone, and it would be Senesi, he would be my defender. If I had two free transfers this week, I'd be getting in Senesi and another player. But the fact that Wan-Bissaka's not in my lineup anyway, if I brought Senesi in, there's every chance he's on the bench as well. So I'm not gaining anything from that. The only risk I have with Wan-Bissaka is he drops in price again. But as I've said, he's got so much money in the bank. Am I too fussed about players dropping in price? Not really. I'd rather have that than take a 4 point hit at this stage of the season where points are so important. So I don't really see Wan-Bissaka coming out of my team, but if you were looking for a defender, Senesi would be the one for me. Now into midfield, and Sarr is obviously still injured. We took out Marmoush last week and also took out Strand Larsen. So Sarr kind of stayed, and it's because he was the shortest term in terms of a timetable for coming back and playing for Crystal Palace. Now, it is frustrating because I wanted him in for the Sunderland and West Ham games, and after game week 6, or including game week 6, it's difficult fixtures for Crystal Palace from an attacking point of view. They play some good defences and some good teams in general, but it's not someone that I think I need to shift on because if Sarr is fit and he's playing, I'm going to want him in my team. That's why I got him in on a free transfer a couple of game weeks ago. Someone like a Wan-Bissaka, say, if he's fit and playing for West Ham, well, West Ham aren't doing very well anyway, so how many points am I going to get from him? Whereas Sarr, I don't want to waste a transfer on someone who could be back soon if my squad can sort of handle his absence in the meantime. So I'm not planning on using a midfielder transfer. One area where I am probably going to use a transfer is up front on Raul Jimenez, who just isn't playing for Fulham. At the start of the season, had him, Welbeck, and Strand Larsen, and I don't regret bringing them in. Statistically, I thought there would be good players, and if Strand Larsen wasn't injured, if Welbeck had scored a penalty that he had, and had some good chances, both of those could have had points. The frustrating thing with Jimenez is that he's not even on the pitch, so he's not even starting for Fulham, which I would have thought he would have done. And I think if he had, I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd get a goal in his first 4 games. But you look at that and the fixtures in the future, it just looks a nightmare. And full disclosure, I would have made this transfer last night or on Sunday night before he dropped on price. but the website wasn't working for me. It crashed. It said it was updating. So I couldn't make the transfer. The transfer I would have made was to get in Nick Voltemada from Newcastle. And it kind of goes against a lot of things that I try and do in FPL, which is early transfers. I don't tend to make early transfers, mainly because of potential injuries during the week. And I also don't tend to go for players who are new to the league because I think it takes time to settle. So it could be a little bit of a blessing that I couldn't make this transfer because maybe he gets injured in European football this week. Maybe there's other issues in my team that I need to get. And now Jimenez has dropped in price to 6.3. It's dropped again. I don't need to force this transfer through. There's no need to make this transfer right now because Jimenez is unlikely to drop in price again. Even if Voltemada goes up in price during the week, I've still got so much cash in the bank that I'm okay with it. But Jimenez probably will be coming out this week. At the moment, it's for Voltemada. I just think Newcastle looked really good attacking wise. He was involved in a lot of the link up play, midfielders playing into him laying it off, them getting shots from in and around the box off of his what would be assists. The fixtures don't look amazing, but they don't look terrible either. And the fact that Visser is out means that he will be starting every game. And even when Visser's back, Visser hasn't had a pre-season. He's also coming back from an injury. It could be ages before he is even fit and then match ready to play. So I think Voltemada's minutes are safe. And at 7 million, I think it's worth the risk. It's not like I'm getting in a player, for 9 million, say, or 9.5 million, who's new to the league and up front. I think the difference between Jimenez and Voltemada in price is only 0.7 million now. So even if Voltemada gets 2 points a game, that's more than Jimenez was getting anyway. So it is a risk, but it's a risk I'm willing to take, especially now that I've got João Pedro. Obviously, if I hadn't got João Pedro in last game week, I would have gone for him instead. But now I've got a bit of flexibility. I think I'll probably go Voltemada this week and then Welbeck to Gyökeres for game week 6 if I don't take out Wan-Bissaka in the meantime. So overall, the strengths for me with my team is the money in the bank. I have that freedom with the funds to kind of swap to anyone other than the most expensive players like a Haaland. I know a lot of people talking about swapping Salah to Haaland at the moment. I just don't necessarily see it. I think Salah is still a solid pick, and people are kind of panicking for this Burnley game that Haaland has, I believe, in game week 6. And people were maybe going to think about free hitting. Now they're not. Can they do it with free transfers? And I think I'm happy just to ride the wave and, risk it with Haaland against Burnley in game week 6 and me not owning him and just keeping hold of Salah. Another strength is that I've got off to a good start. Even with the strikers not performing, none of my strikers this season have scored a goal. I'm still inside the top million. So if I can just fix that issue now, I will have a really solid squad and something to build on. I don't feel like I need to chase points and force the issue. I'm happy with my squad, it's well balanced, and they are scoring points as a whole. The negatives, however, is the injuries. If I hadn't had Marmoush and Strand Larsen injured, they'd both still be in my team, and I would have swapped. I would have used my 3 free transfers on Welbeck, Jimenez, and Wan-Bissaka right now, and I'd be loving my squad completely. But that just goes to show how hectic FPL can get, especially around the international breaks, and why it's so important to save transfers early on and not just make knee-jerk transfers that for a player who's performed well in game week 1, because then your squad might get a bit of injuries, bit of rotation risk, and you're stuck with them no matter what. Another weakness is the lack of free transfers. I do like to save them up, and it does feel right now that I have to use them as soon as they come up, really. My next 3, unless there's any more situations and injuries, free transfers, they're booked in. And, that's not something that I like to do. I like to have that freedom. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like my transfer? Are you thinking of making any free transfers this game week? How are you doing in the league and, in FPL in general? Always great to discuss FPL. Thank you again for listening and subscribing. It really is appreciated. And I will see you in the next one.